And that's something that you are very passionate about. One of the things that you have been working feverishly through your life is to stop this harassment by the law, by the government, who has really made outcast of sex workers, who have put the blame on the sex worker, locked the sex worker up, and have made them the real problem.
They would like for you to think that. They would very much like to think that, the anti-trafficking industry, we call it the rescue industry, has become proliferate over the last 10 years. You cannot swing a dead cat in Orlando without hitting an organization that is dedicated to raising awareness or eradicating modern day slavery. But what they don't take into account is that there are a lot of people who are engaged in the sex trade because they didn't have any other choice, and what they needed to be offered was not rescue but opportunity. We need to outlaw poverty. We need to outlaw people not having enough to eat. We need to outlaw children, being running away from their homes because they're being abused or neglected, or because they're LGBT or whatever. Those are the things that we need to focus on. Just the act of a consensual transaction between consenting adults is not all that's at stake here. We're talking a lot of different intersecting issues that create an environment for exploitation. And when you have something that's criminalized, which sex work is criminalized in the United States, with the exception of a few places in Nevada, a few counties in Nevada, when you criminalize an entire class of people, you make their lives more dangerous, because, they're afraid. They don't want to get caught. They don't want to go to jail, because if you get arrested for a prostitution-related charge, your life is over. You can't rent an apartment. You can't get financing for a house. You probably won't be able to open a bank account, and you'll have a prison record as well, or an arrest record as well. And people look at that. I don't want to rent to that person.
So you would like to see the laws changed, not only in Florida, but it's a good place to begin, but around the United States, where essentially it's decriminalized.
Well, in 2016, Amnesty International released a policy on sex work where they recommended that sex work be decriminalized worldwide. Now, decriminalized and legalized are two very different things. Decriminalized means the consensual transaction of a one-to-one from one buyer to one seller would be decriminalized. What also would be decriminalized is the support system that sex workers have, which might be a driver. It might be someone who helped them with marketing. It might be a parent who lives with them. It might be someone who they pay for their food or something like that, a child. There's a lot of different things, and those are called third-party facilitators. And those people would no longer be criminalized as well. And we feel like that is the policy that should be. That's what sex workers have asked for. It would allow sex workers to report violence against them without fear of being arrested. Sex workers recognize when someone's being exploited, and they would be able to help that person find the services that they need if we were decriminalized. In the criminalized environment right now, if a sex worker is assaulted and she goes to the police, it's much more likely that she's going to be arrested or not be believed. Those are your two choices. So sex workers don't report violence.
So walk me through the steps. If you're a sex worker, you're arrested, what are the steps? What do the police do? And what do you have to pay in fines, or how does that work?
Well, it's different everywhere. But we just saw last week a raid on a strip club in Jacksonville, and they arrested, I believe, 14 sex workers. They shackled them, handcuffed them, and took them out on a bus. They shackled someone who was stripping. Okay. That seems kind of excessive. Okay. It's low-hanging fruit. They raided the club with masks down, with saying that they were looking for human trafficking victims. Okay. Well, all of these girls were at the strip club consensually, but they took them out. They humiliated and they posted their names and faces on the media, on Facebook. The cops brag about it. The sheriff brags about it.
And they were working there illegally.
And they were working there legally.
A legal strip club.
A legal strip club, and they arrested them on prostitution charges. Now the good thing is the strip club owners went and got a lawyer, and now they're suing them in a federal lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of putting women who are doing erotic labor in leg irons. That seems extreme.
So when someone is arrested, let's just say a prostitute is arrested, what happens? Walk me through the step.
She would go to jail.
Okay.
They're gonna arrest her. They're going to take her to some place where they're going to question her, and they're going to take her phone away. They're going to steal her money. She's not going to get that back.
Wait, what do you mean they steal her money?
They take any money that she has on her at that time.
No
because
matter
that's
what it
considered
is.
proceeds of prostitution.
So
it's illegal funds, so they steal it. Right? Legal theft, totally legal theft. They'll steal any of the property that she might have. And it is theft. I want to make it really clear. It is theft. When you take something that's not yours, whether you're a cop, working a beat or not, taking someone's money is not helpful. Then they go to jail. They may sit there for their first arraignment. They go before the judge. The judge may decide to hold them on a bond anywhere from $500 to $1,500. They'll be at some point in time they'll go before a judge.
How long would they sit in jail then if they didn't have the money for the bond?
If they didn't have the money in the bond, they're going to sit there till their next court appearance, or until a public defender is able to get them released, or until they come up with a bond.
So that could be for how long? I mean, roughly.
I've known girls to sit in jail for 6 months before they're released on a simple prostitution charge.
Oh my God.
And so when you go to jail and you aren't able to pay your rent, you're going to lose your home. You're not able to pay your car. You're going to lose your car. You lose everything. In Orange County, it wasn't too long ago, but they were releasing people at midnight. And so they would release a lot of these ladies at midnight with dead phones. They didn't have any shoes. They probably were arrested without shoes on. They would let them go, and they would walk out of the county jail at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And before they got to the IHOP, they would be picked up by a pimp, taken across the street to a hotel, and now they're being coerced and forced into doing things that they didn't want to do. They give them a hamburger, they feed them. These are all things that, people need.
So then they go in front of the judge. The judge looks at the case, whatever, and then can fine them then?
Yeah, they can fine them. They can sentence them to a diversion program, which means that if they complete certain steps and don't get arrested again, they'll be able to have the prostitution arrest expunged. It's a misdemeanor. However, if they're arrested for a third time, it's considered habitual, and they receive a 1 year and a day in prison.
1 year
in prison.
So getting caught as a prostitute, as a sex worker, it's a nightmare. I mean,
it's a nightmare. It's your worst nightmare. Because then you become known to the cops who are on the street that you're a known sex worker, and that leaves them free to exploit and harass you as well. There was a young lady in Columbus, Ohio, that was she had been arrested for a prostitution charge. She had been released, ROR. She was walking home. She had called her mother, said she was going to be there. A police officer by the name of Andrew Mitchell pulled up, told her to get in the car. She got in the front seat of the car. He pulled in next to an apartment building so that she couldn't open the door or get out, and proceeded to, some things took place, and he ended up shooting her 8 times in the front seat of his car, killing her. Her name is Donna Dalton, and killing her. And he went for months without being indicted. Months and months and months, because the police officers are the enemy. I mean, most times there's any police officer will tell you, ask them, what's the best kind of snitch you can get? A white hooker.
I've never asked a cop that.
Yeah, you should try it sometime. Yeah, it's the best. It's the best snitch you can get.
So if it was decriminalized, walk me through then what would change then?
If it was decriminalized, they wouldn't be able to. It's been decriminalized in New Zealand for 16 years now. There would be no criminal or civil penalties to someone who was engaged in trading sex a one-to-one transaction. It would still outlaw pimping. It would still outlaw coercive and trafficking and that kind of thing, activities, but it would remove the criminal and civil penalties. So there would be no more fines. There would be no more being held in jail until you lose lose all your stuff. And eventually, as time went on, the stigma would become decreased. There would be less likely for harassment by police officers. The criminal justice system would receive a great deal of relief, because these cases just stack up on public defenders' desks, and they just plead guilty, get it over with.
Yeah, I mean, everyone in these cases must be rolling their eyes from the judge to the...
97% of all cases in the United States, all cases, not just prostitution cases, are pled out, which means that they don't get a trial. They agree to plead guilty to a lesser charge just in order to get it over with. Because if you don't, you could be sitting in prison or in jail waiting for your court case for years on years on years.